Well, boys and girls, ladies and gentlemen, children of all ages, it should come as no shock to you whatsoever that Star Wars is in the current state that it is. A lot of people have been seeing what's been going on over the last few years and how things have just continued to get worse and worse. The ratings are in oblivion and the fans simply aren't happy in any way, shape, or form. And at the end of the day, the paying customers who ends up mattering the most, if they don't show up to buy your toys, purchase your streaming services, or watch your shows, then at the end of the day, it really doesn't matter what kind of content you try to push out there, no matter what kind of how good it is or how bad it is, or what kind of your gender or narrative you're trying to insert into a lot of your stuff, or any kind of ways you're trying to change the IP. Because at the end of the day, the customers are what matter the most. They're the ones that pay the bills, and they're the ones that decide whether or not a product is good or bad, no matter how much the media and all of the rest of these people inside of a lot of these major corporations try to blame us, the fans, the paying customers. It never does pan out very well for them in any way, shape, or form. And of course, the latest is none other than Disney's Star Wars The Acolyte, where the Access Media and the shills of the spirit of the age have been out there pushing this thing in full force, trying to write articles and headlines, defending it all the way through the nines. And of course, then the latest edition of that, we just had a new episode drop yesterday, at least at the time of this recording, where of course all of the rumor stuff got confirmed. And yes, somehow, ladies and gentlemen, through the force, a lesbian relationship ended up with a pregnancy, because the force is female now, according to Kathleen Kennedy. I don't know, ladies and gentlemen. It's turned into an absolute abysmal dumpster fire, and the Shill Access Media is doing exactly what the Shill Access Media is doing, as always, and they deserve to be shamed for it, ladies and gentlemen, because on this channel, we are going to make shame great again. We are going to mock, we are going to ridicule, we are going to laugh at these people until they become so irrelevant that they either go bankrupt or they change their ways. Whichever way happens, I'm totally okay again, boys and girls. And so the latest edition of those that need to be shamed, of course, color us shocked, there is nothing more than the Access Media shills that are out there running as much interference as they possibly can. And of course, it's not the writers, it's not the showrunners, it's not the people that are behind any of the creative decisions that have completely and totally destroyed modern Star Wars in the Disney era. No, boys and girls, it's your fault. You're a bigot, you're a sexist, you're a racist, and they will make sure that you're reminded of that. Well, guess what, boys and girls? We're going to mock, we're going to ridicule, we're going to laugh at them and remind them once again where at the end of the day, the customer is always right and they are clearly very wrong. So we're going to take this article from That Park Place by our dear sweet friend John Trent over there, because the Access Media, of course, blames the fans for ruining Star Wars, not the people at Lucasfilm pushing the queer feminist agendas. But before we do, if you do enjoy our content, make sure you hit that like button, subscribe if you have not already, or follow depending on what platform you're on, and leave us a comment down below letting us know what you think about all of this. And of course, if you feel like it, share this out on all your social media platforms and get even more of us in here so we can make shame great again even better, boys and girls. To no one's surprise, members of the Access Media are blaming fans for ruining Star Wars rather than the Lucasfilm employees who are pushing a queer, feminist, and woke agenda. Yeah, because we're the ones writing this stuff and putting it out there and spending millions of dollars on it, so obviously it's our fault. The latest attack on fans comes from Olivia Scott in an article at Inverse titled, "The Acolyte Isn't Ruining Star Wars. You are!" Oh, yes. Oh, yes. In the article, Scott declares that The Acolyte is one of the best additions to the galaxy far, far away in a long time, embracing decades of nostalgia while also thinking critically on the franchise's legacy. Then why aren't there any good white people in it? It also might be the most diverse Star Wars story yet. It's diverse except minus all the white male good people. And while it's definitely a boon for marginalized fans, it's made The Acolyte the target of a vocal splinter of the fandom. Really? A vocal splinter of the fandom. How are those viewing numbers going again? Oh, that's right. Disney's out there touting their numbers, saying it's great, and comparing the numbers to Ahsoka, saying it's only slightly behind Ahsoka. Except Ahsoka's viewing numbers were absolutely abysmal So I guess we can surmise with just a little bit of logic that Acolyte is even worse than that, boys and girls. And it's definitely the lowest rated Star Wars of all time. So yeah. From there, she makes it clear who she's despairing in the article. Whether you know them as the fandom menace or a cluster of blue checkmark users on Twitter. Oh, you mean money to actually pay for that blue check mark? It's impossible to escape the orbit. The same folks that review bomb diverse swings like Marvel's Eternals and the Lord of the Rings prequel, The Rings of Power, have now set their sights on the Acolyte. Except you can't once prove to me that there's a bunch of racist, sexist bigots out there review bombing things because they don't do it to movies and television shows where the lead character is a female or a POC when they're actually good. It sounds like the only thing that gets review bombed is actual shite. Because if that was the case, Creed would have gotten review bombed. Yet all three of those movies have excellent Rotten Tomatoes scores from the fan base and did halfway decent at the box office as well. Unlike what you're producing. Weird. As expected, a member of the Access media, she labels individuals who do not like the woke agenda that has ruined the Friday franchise as bigots. The Acolyte is not ruining Star Wars, but the bigoted bashlack is definitely ruining the fun for everyone else. Why? How is what we're saying in an internet age where you can block and choose not to watch our stuff, how is that ruining the fun for you? I'm not living in your house. I'm not crawling in your ear, yelling at you that this is horrible and horrendous. No. So how is that ruining fun? Oh, that's right. It's just false gaslighting and accusations that have no substance whatsoever. Color of shock there. She continues with the typical fanists and folks. It's not outright shocking to see something like the Acolyte marred by racist, misogynist, and even anti-LGBTQ backlash. Oh, yes. There it is, boys and girls. The racism. Except you can't say that about Creed. The article gets outright laughable at one point when Scott writes, comments on set designs and screenwritings have turned into misogynic microaggressions against Hedlund. Even critiques on the series have been weaponized by its haters. Oh, so you admit that there is legitimate criticism out there, that people aren't just talking about the race or the sexual orientation of people when they critique the show. But of course, that's all just a front to hide their racism and their misogyny, isn't it? What's that old saying about them accusing you of the things they're actually doing being true? After making all of these accusations, she then declares the culprit behind the criticism of Star Wars is male entitlement. The origins of this toxicity aren't difficult to figure out. At the end of the day, it boils down to entitlement. Many male fans feel like they own the franchise. Well, we do kind of pay for it, and are determined to safeguard it from anyone that could damage that ownership. I think Kathleen Kennedy and Disney Star Wars is doing that enough on their own. That makes it hard for disparate groups to coexist, and even harder for any non-white, non-male creatives hoping to tell stories within the franchise. How the fuck do you figure that? All Disney Star Wars does is hire diverse motherfuckers. We ain't seen a white male hired to do anything Disney Star Wars outside of the beta male bitch, Dave Filoni, that was already there. All you get is diverse fucking voices in Disney Star Wars. This lying ass bitch doesn't know her ass from a fucking hole in the ground, and is just out there spewing more of the same nonsense talking points that we've heard for the last 5 fucking years out of the irrelevant Access media. We wonder why they cry and whine and write articles about how YouTube and streaming platforms and any other video content creation out there is taking away from their viewership. I fucking wonder why. when you write articles spouting honest to God nonsense. You contradict yourself in your own article, saying that legitimate criticisms are nothing more than microaggressions against Leslie Headland, who is out there flat out in the marketing, promoting it as a queer agenda-driven show. And the latest episode of a lesbian relationship producing not only a pregnancy, which is biologically impossible, but of course they're going to use the Force as their MacGuffin for it. But color us shocked there. It created the answer to everything. The source that's going to be the one that's going to fix everything. And color us shocked there. It's a black female. Now, we don't know about her sexuality status yet. But I mean, given the fact that Leslie Headland only knows how to write about her own experiences, which outside of being outside of the office of Harvey Weinstein and carpet munching, I don't think she has much more experience like that. Because based on the creative stuff that we've seen from the Acolyte so far, she has no creative talent whatsoever. So, of course, that's what they do. They fan blame because they can't criticize Leslie Headland because she's one of those protected groups because she munches carpet. Literally, who she sleeps with matters more than any kind of creative talent she has whatsoever. So they will go to the carpet. They will go to the mat in order to defend her, even though she's shite as a showrunner and a creative. It's not even worth addressing any of these arguments made by Scott because they're simply untrue. The entire article is a lie. Fans are not the ones ruining Star Wars. It's indeed the executives and creatives at Lucasfilm who are in control of the franchise, not us. George Lucas even recognizes this. We've talked about that before. We talked about the Cannes Film Festival. He says it's not really the Star Wars was who actually knew this world because there's a lot of it. The Force, for example, nobody understands the Force. I mean, it's just all of this kind of stuff. There's been a million examples of this stuff. We can show that the fans are rejecting it. The average audience is rejecting this. Ahsoka, number 5. The View, and it eventually, the next week, it dropped off the Nielsen's rating charts after its premiere. It premiered number 2 in the top 10 after a 2-episode premiere, just like they've done with The Acolyte, so it makes it even easier to fluff up the numbers, right? And it dropped off as the second one. That's not us doing that. That's not the fans out there, because guess what? The majority of the Main Street audience out there, the tens of millions, the hundreds of millions of Star Wars fans out there, aren't watching our YouTube videos. Hell, one of the largest YouTube channels in our corner of our sphere, Star Wars Theory, got what, 2-3 million subscribers? If they really had that much influence, then how are there still 3 and 4 million people, according to your own numbers, tuning in for these disastrous abominations? It's going down the toilet because people like Kathleen Kennedy, Bob Iger, Leslie Headland, and Dave Filoni have made poor creative choices. They have decided to put agenda above good storytelling in Star Wars. The only thing the mainstream media has anymore, the access media, the legacy media, as we like to refer to them around here, has, is gaslighting and bullshit accusations. This is the last dying gasps of the enemy that we have faced in the culture war for the better part of 2 decades, losing. These are the last gasps of an enemy that knows they are irrelevant and that they have lost the war. Because boys and girls, although the culture war will never be fully over, we are on the upswing. And they're screaming and crying because they know they are losing. You don't need me to tell you that. Look at the numbers. Look at the video game industry. Look at the billions of dollars that have been lost at the box office and on streaming, continuing to try to push this neo-Disney Star Wars bullshit pushed by Kathleen Kennedy, who clearly hates everything white male and hates everything Star Wars. Ergo, she hates any fan of legitimate Star Wars. That's why this fails. And that's why it will continue to fail and they will continue to lose. So take solace, boys and girls. We are winning and they are screaming into the ether because they know they're irrelevant at this point. But that's okay because we're going to make shame great again. And these fools deserve to be shamed.